If there's one thing Tim Cook wants to be remembered for, it probably isn't good morning, but that's what we're gonna remember. Honestly, I know that the guy's getting older and he's nearing that retirement age, but I appreciate all that he's done. I think that he's done an excellent job leading Apple into success after Steve Jobs, and according to Mark Gurman in his latest Power On newsletter, there's one more major product that Tim Cook wants to oversee the launch of before retiring. Let's begin. There's pretty much only been like two major Apple products that have been rumored that have not been announced, and the two options were essentially Apple Glasses, so Apple getting into the augmented reality business, or the Apple Car. And frankly, I think that Apple is far too late in the EV business, but I've done far more videos about that on Talos of EV, so I'm not going to get into it here. But I actually think that Apple Glasses makes a ton of sense to be the final product Tim Cook heads out on, because if you think back through his legacy, there's a lot of things that we got to give some credit towards Tim's oversight for. I know one person at a company does not attribute all of its success and all of its greatest features, but his leadership is what permitted and allowed for so many great things that I think we take for granted today. Tim Cook oversaw the launch of the first biometrics in iPhones with the 5S with Touch ID, and I do think Apple needed Steve Jobs to get started and get off the ground, but in a different way, Apple kind of needed someone like Tim Cook to sustain Apple and prevent it from going bankrupt or losing too much relevance. And honestly, something I remember a lot about the Steve Jobs era was him not really caring about selling in much volume. He just wanted to have the best overall products. He didn't really care about having much diversity in lineups and having too many different size options or cheaper options and premium options. Steve was just kind of like, this is what I think is the best. You guys can take it or leave it. If you don't think it's the best, you're wrong, and you can go buy some inferior product elsewhere. When Tim Cook came around, you can almost instantly see Apple start diversifying lineups. You know, they very quickly started making cheaper iPhones with the 5C versus the 5S, and then with the 6, they started branching out into different size demographics, and Tim Cook was also the type to want to have the iPad mini, you know, so you can have a smaller iPad now. A couple years later, iPad Pro, so you can have an even larger iPad now with the iPhone SE. We saw Tim Cook being comfortable having 4-inch iPhones, and shortly then after, 5.5-inch to 6.7-inch iPhones, all kind of at the same time. So Tim, I think, did a great job figuring out how to keep Apple's brand reputation high and build quality really, really good, while simultaneously making people feel like they have options with Apple now. You can buy the cheap one, you can buy the nice one, you can buy the big one, you can buy the small one. And that diversification I appreciate from Tim, but I don't necessarily think that's what he will be remembered for. I think that those types of changes were probably just inevitable after Steve Jobs' passing, but something I do see is kind of the running theme for new product categories under Tim Cook was likely wearables. You know, the biggest product category that I think changes Apple and changes our world outside of, you know, what Steve introduced, like the iPhone and the iPad and the Mac, would probably be things like the Apple Watch, which have saved countless lives and changed kind of the whole watch industry as a whole. It's crazy to me that Apple Watches are selling better than just normal watches now, and they're becoming so commonplace. You see them everywhere. People use them for contactless payments. People use them for health monitoring and exercise and notification management. There's so many things in the world that are now different because of the Apple Watch, and that's something that Tim oversaw and really pioneered the launch of. Despite it not being the first smartwatch by any means, I think it should be attributed to the smartwatch that kind of changed watches forever. And another big category that I can attribute a lot of credit to Tim for is AirPods, because wireless headphones, again, existed before AirPods did, but I think Apple kind of mainstreamed it and kind of showcased to the world what like true wireless earbuds could be like. So there's no wire in between the two, and thanks to the W1 chip, they bypassed this whole annoying process of having to go to settings and Bluetooth and find the accessory you want to connect to. They kind of streamlined and simplified wireless headphones for the masses, and now of course we see AirPods and AirPods clones and companies' alternatives to AirPods everywhere. It's become so commonplace to the point that now I find it kind of rare and kind of weird when I see someone using wired headphones, because AirPods have trickled their way down into our markets and gotten cheaper, or even just wireless earbuds of some kind have gotten more affordable. So that's another big product category that I could see owing a lot to Tim Cook's research and a lot of Tim Cook's leadership of, no, this is the future of where headphones are going to go. And they made a lot of controversial decisions, like removing the headphone jack and wanting to move people towards USB-C, which was also introduced under Tim Cook on the 12-inch MacBook, and then they went all in with Type-C on the MacBook Air. Air and the MacBook Pros, which it sounds like they might end up going backwards on, but at least it doesn't sound like USB-A will be returning. So as long as Tim Cook can be attributed as one of the CEOs to kill off USB-A before every other CEO, I'm good with that. I'll give him that credit. But I think Apple Watch and AirPods are probably going to be looked at as one of the most influential product categories that Tim Cook introduced. There's definitely some worthy mentions, you know, the smart speaker market, which kind of belly flopped at first with the HomePod, but now I think the HomePod Mini is actually really good and tremendous value with great sound quality. Also, AirTags. I think there's going to be a lot of lost things that end up being found thanks to Apple's Find My network. Once again, not an original idea, but as you notice throughout Apple's history, they rarely ever are the first to something. You know, even in the Steve Jobs era, they weren't the first to come out with a smartphone. They weren't the first to come out with a touch display, but they found a way to mainstream it and make it approachable to everyday consumers. And I think that's partly what, you know, AirTags have done, AirPods as well. So with his legacy, I think having a huge emphasis on wearables, Apple Glass makes the most amount of sense to be the final big note he goes out on. Because I also think Apple Glass are going to be more influential possibly than Apple Watch, because if they get the technology right and they can get the battery life good and the weight down and somewhat make it aesthetically pleasing, because this is a very personable wearable, unlike AirPods which stick in your ears or an Apple Watch that stays on your wrist. This is something that sits on your face and people are going to be looking at you wearing these glasses all the time. So they have to look pretty good and they have to blend in with your fashion pretty easily. They can't be looking like Google Glass or some kind of bulky Microsoft HoloLens looking thing. I don't think they're coming around soon. I think that Mark Gurman is correct in assuming they're probably not going to launch until mid-decade, so we might have another 4 or 5 years. But Tim Cook does have a payment contract that expires in 2025, which is why a lot of people are assuming the guy probably wants to retire sometime in the middle of the 2020s. And to the people who do talk about the Apple Car, they're claiming that that's even further out than that, which in my opinion means it's probably never going to happen. But with Apple glasses, this is something I could see incorporating so well within the Apple ecosystem. You can basically add 3D holograms to your Apple Watch, your iPhone. You could look to the other side of the room and a notification pops out from where your iPhone is. The U1 chip is probably going to help a lot with that, as well as spatial audio with AirPods, being able to figure out where your devices are in the room and where you put different holograms. You could just slap a TV on any wall. You could just add an external monitor next to your Mac. I think it could really heighten the whole Apple ecosystem, and I don't think glasses are necessarily meant to replace anything. I think they'll be far more expensive than a watch and not as good at activity tracking as a watch can be, and they're not going to be as great taking selfies or making FaceTime calls as an iPhone is. So I think it's kind of stupid to assume that a pair of glasses can replace our phone, but I absolutely agree that similar to the watch, it can heighten our entire tech ecosystem experience. I mean, it can add drastic changes to advertising if the glasses are able to look at a little app clip, you know, QR code, and that can play a certain advertisement. They're going to be probably powered off of your phone at first and then make their way into being more independent. You can get text messages without having to look at a specific display. There's a lot of potential for Apple Glass. It's kind of endless when you think about it. Like, if the tech gets good enough and the battery life is reliable enough, will we even need displays on our products anymore? Or will the glasses just be able to project an image on top of just a basic piece of glass or even just your hand? And I know Tim Cook's been working on it for a long time, so I can see why he wants to follow through on this whole project and watch it release, but I'm curious what you guys think Tim Cook's last major product category should be. Do you think he should stick around for that, or would you hope he would stick around even longer? Just remember, this guy probably wants to retire someday. He's been having to listen to us geeks nonstop for the past 10 years, so let me know all that good stuff down below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.